Good morning from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's 9:58 a.m. on the 13th of September 2025, and it's Saturday, Shabbat Shalom, and it's forecast to rain from 11 a.m, but I snuck the birdies out just now, not that long ago. Got them out there for some sunshine before the weather turns foul, excuse the pun. So they're very happy and all the birds are twittering, but no sooner I've put them out, the dark clouds are gathering, so I might have to interrupt this reading to race outside and bring them in, which is a bit irritating, but I just thought I'd give them as much time outside as they possibly can, because it's better for them than being in the inside cages stuck in this room all day. It's a bit grim, quite frankly. No one wants to be a complete prisoner, especially birds. Anyway, Kermie's happily preening and Bo's just sort of preening too and looking around the garden, so I think they're contented. So we continue on with the Quenta Silmarillion, the history of the Silmarils. Chapter 1. Of the beginning of days. I'll read until it starts raining, and then there'll be a mad, frantic Tanya dash, as it usually is anyway. Got to stretch life out to the last possible, bird on the wire, and just live your best life regardless of whatever happens. Because each day is a gift, people of Earth. An immense gift. Right, let us begin. Of the beginning of days. It is told among the wise that the first war began before Ada was full-shaped, and ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon earth, and for long Melkor had the upper hand. But in the midst of the war, a spirit of great strength and hardihood came to the aid of the Valar, hearing in the far heaven that there was battle in the little kingdom, and Ada was filled with the sound of his laughter. So came Tulkas the Strong, whose anger passes like a mighty wind, scattering cloud and darkness before it. And Melkor fled before his wrath and his laughter, and forsook Arda, and there was peace for a long age. And Tulkas remained and became one of the Valar of the kingdom of Arda, but Melkor brooded in the outer darkness, and his hate was given to Tulkas forever after. In that time, the Valar brought order to the seas and the lands and the mountains, and Yavanna planted at last the seeds that she had long devised. And since, when the fires were subdued or buried beneath the primeval hills, there was need of light, Auli, at the prayer of Yavanna, wrought 2 mighty lamps for the lighting of the Middle Earth, which he had built amid the encircling seas. Then Vada filled the lamps, and Manwë hallowed them, and the Valar set them upon high pillars, more lofty far than any far than are any mountains of the later days. Excuse me. One lamp they raised near the north of Middle Earth, and it was named Elun, and the other was raised in the south, and it was named Ormal. And the light of the lamps of the Valar flowed out over the earth, so that all was lit as it were in a changeless day. Then the seeds that Yavanna had sown began softly to sprout and to burgeon, and there arose a multitude of growing things, great and small, mosses and grasses and great ferns, and trees whose tops were crowned with cloud, as they were living mountains, but whose feet were wrapped in a green twilight. And beasts came forth and dwelt in the grassy plains, or in the rivers and the lakes, or walked in the shadows of the woods. As yet no flower had bloomed, nor any bird had sung, for these things waited still their time in the bosom of Yavanna. But wealth there was of her imagining, and nowhere more rich than in the midmost parts of the earth, where the light of both the lamps met and blended. And there upon the Isle of Almaran in the great lake was the first dwelling of the Valar, when all things were young, and new made green was yet a marvel in the eyes of the makers, and they were long content, like my little birdie boys are right now. Now it came to pass that while the Valar rested from their labours, and watched the growth and unfolding of the things that they had devised and begun, Manwë ordered a great feast, and the Valar and all their host came at his bidding. But Auli and Tulkas were weary, for the craft of Auli and the strength of Tulkas had been at the service of all without ceasing in the days of their labour. And Melkor knew of all that was done, for even then he had secret friends and spies among the Maiar, all whom he had converted to his cause. And far off in the darkness he was filled with hatred, being jealous of the work of his peers, whom he desired to make subject to himself. Therefore he gathered to himself spirits out of the halls of Ea that he had perverted to his service, and he deemed himself strong. And seeing now his time, he drew near again to Arda, and came down upon it, and the beauty of the earth in its spring filled him the more with hate. What an ugly soul! Who could possibly hate springtime? Such a pretty season. Except maybe those of us that suffer from, hay fever. But then you hate really the effects of the springtime, not spring itself, you understand. Oh, bless. Now therefore the Valar were gathered upon Almaran, fearing no evil, and because of the light of Iluan, they did not perceive the shadow in the north that was cast from afar by Melkor, for he was growing dark as the night of the void. And it is sung that in that feast of the spring of Adar, Tulkas espoused Nessa, the sister of Oromi, and she danced before the Valar upon the green grass of Almarin. Then Tulkas slept, being weary and content, and Melkor deemed that his hour had come. And he passed therefore over the walls of the night with his host, and came to Middle-earth far in the north, and the Valar were not aware of him. Now Melkor began the delving and building of a vast fortress deep under earth, beneath dark mountains, where the beams of Iluan were cold and dim. That stronghold was called Utumno. And though the Valar knew naught of it as yet, nonetheless, the evil of Melkor and the blight of his hatred flowed out thence, and the spring of Adar was marred. Green things fell sick and rotted, and rivers were choked with weeds and slime, and fens were made rank and perilous. Rank and poisonous. The breeding place of flies, and forests grew dark and perilous, the haunts of fear, and beasts became monsters of horn and ivory, and dyed the earth with blood. Then the Valar knew indeed that Melkor was at work again, and they sought for his hiding place. But Melkor, trusting in the strength of Utumno and the might of his servants, came forth suddenly to war, and struck the first blow ere the Valar were prepared. And he assailed the lights of Iluan and Ormal, and cast down their pillars, and broke their lamps. In the overthrow of the mighty pillars, lands were broken, seas arose in tumult, and when the lamps were spilled, destroying flame was poured out over the earth. And the shape of Adar and the symmetry of its waters and its lands was marred in that time, so that the first designs of the Valar were never after restored. In the confusion and the darkness, Melkor escaped, though fear fell upon him. For above the roaring of the seas, he heard the voice of Manwë as a mighty wind, and the earth trembled beneath the feet of Tulkas. But he came to Utumno ere Tulkas could overtake him, and there he lay hid. And the Valar could not at that time overcome him, for the greater part of their strength was needed to restrain the tumults of the earth, and to save from ruin all that could be saved of their labour. And afterwards they feared to rend the earth again, until they knew where the children of Iluvatar were dwelling, who were yet to come in a time that was hidden from the Valar. Thus ended the spring of Arda. The dwelling of the Valar upon Almaran was utterly destroyed, and they had no abiding place upon the face of the earth. Therefore they departed from Middle-earth and went to the land of Aman, the westernmost of all lands, upon the borders of the world, for its west shores looked upon the outer sea that is called by the elves Ekaya, encircling the kingdom of Arda. How wide is that sea? None know but the Valar, and beyond it are the walls of the night. But the east shores of Aman were the uttermost end of Belegaer, the great sea of the west. And since Melkor was returned to Middle-earth and they could not yet overcome him, the Valar fortified their dwelling, and upon the shores of the sea they raised the Pelori, the mountains of Aman, highest upon earth. And above all, the mountains of the Pelori was that height upon whose summit Manwë set his throne. Just check that quickly. I don't know who that was. Oh, it's nothing. Taniquetel, the elves named that holy mountain, and Oyolossi, everlasting whiteness, and Elerina, crowned with stars, and many names beside. But the Sindar spoke of it in their later tongue as Amon Ulos. From their halls upon Taniquetel, Manwë and Varda could look out across the earth, even into the furthest east. My friend Nikki, or my neighbour down from behind me, is telling little African boys, they run rampant, these boys, not because they're African, just because they're children. Children are children, boys are boys and wild, but she's telling them off for throwing stones at magpies. She said, I saw you in the other street and I'll tell your parents. And they're like, giving a cheek back actually. If I catch them throwing stones at my birds or any other bird, I won't just be telling them off, I'll be wringing their little bloody necks. But the cheek they're giving back to her, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, I hope she tells their parents, but knowing their parents, I don't think they'll really care all that much. Those boys, they run in front of the traffic and on the road in front of oncoming traffic. They're utterly boundaryless and fearless and a bit, quite frankly, quite crazy. You know, everyone in the neighbourhood knows that they actually run in front of oncoming cars. Like, they're really dangerous children. But I'm glad she told them off to not hurt the birds, though. I heard her say, oh, but they attack us because they're magpies. She said, but you've got helmets on, and they're just a little tiny bird, defenceless. And she's actually right about that, you know. Like, you can wave your arms and chase them off, but there's no need to throw rocks at them. That's just nasty. But, you know, they are after all children and probably don't follow that logic. Anyway, they've been up and down my street here looking at my birds, and I'm thinking, I've already been a bit worried actually. So it just goes to show I was right to worry, because Nikki's pulled them up in some very bad behaviour. Anyway, I don't think they'll do anything here or throw rocks here. They were listening to me telling off little Bo for being vicious and trying to bite me, so they know I don't take shit even from my own little birdies either, so maybe that might keep them a little bit at bay, you just never know. It's such a strange world we live in, though, that you can't even trust children to be kind and gentle and respectful of others. It's really kind of evil, the whole thing, the whole paradigm we live in. But anyway, there's another little boy. He's a white Australian little boy. I pulled up some months ago. I caught him attacking a cat in the neighbourhood, like throwing rocks at the cat. And I ripped him. I ripped him up. I said, don't you dare ever hurt an animal that's innocently minding their own business, not doing anything to harm you. I said, that's just savage. I said, I'll tell your parents too. But he's I think he stopped it after that, but I'm not 100% sure, because of course they wait when there's no adults around to watch. Oh, sadism's running rampant, and I can't help feeling the sadism has been enhanced by this, all those things growing in people's brains, making them cold and empty and voided and cruel, just cruel. Oh well. One more thing we have to survive. The chronic fucking sadism. Anyway, on we go. To Nequatil the elves named that holy mountain, and Oyolosi, everlasting whiteness, and Elarina, crowned with stars, and many names beside, but the Sundar spoke of it in their later tongue as Amon Ulos. From their halls upon Taniquetil, Manui and Vada could look out across the earth, even into the furthest east. Behind the walls of the Pelori, the Valar established their domain in that region which is called Valinor, and there were their houses, their gardens, and their towers. In that guarded land the Valar gathered great store of light, and all the fairest things that were saved from the ruin, and many others yet fairer they made anew, and Valinor became more beautiful even than Middle-earth in the spring of Ardar, and it was blessed, for the deathless dwelt there, and there naught faded nor withered, neither was there any stain upon flower or leaf in the land, nor any corruption or sickness in anything that lived, for the very stones and waters were hallowed. And when Valinor was full wrought, and the mansions of the Valar were established, in the midst of the plain beyond the mountains they built their city, Valmar of many bells. I had a friend, an acquaintance that I worked with at the police academy named Valmar. Very kind woman she was, nice woman. She'd been put through hell on earth too. Very, very traumatised woman, but a lovely soul. It's terrible that some of us who've been the most brutalised are the most loveliest and didn't deserve an iota of what was done to us or what we were put through. What are my little birdies doing? Ah, they're chewing on their Banksia flowers I gave them. Before its western gate there was a green mound, a Zelohar, that is named also Corollary, and Yavanya hallowed it, and she sat there long upon the green grass and sang a song of power, in which was set all her thought of things that grow in the earth. But Nienya thought in silence and watered the mould with tears. He's just racing on that bicycle across the intersection without even looking. Oh, he's with the other nasty little white boy that throws stones at cats. So you see, both little demons together by the gods. Anyway. In that time, the Vala were gathered together to hear the song of Yavanya, and they sat silent upon their thrones of council in the Mahanyaksa, the ring of doom near to the golden gates of Valma, and Yavanya Kementare sang before them, and they watched. And as they watched, upon the mound there came forth 2 slender shoots, and silence was over all the world in that hour, nor was there any other sound save the chanting of Yavanya. Under her song the saplings grew and became fair and tall, and came to flower. Honestly, those kids on those bikes with cars coming, they're going to get killed one day. I'm going to be witnessing a horrible carnage, and it'll be whoever the driver is will actually not really be completely to blame because they just tear out in front without even pausing or slowing down. I don't know what's wrong with those 2 boys. It's like they have a death wish. It's horrific. Terrific people of Earth. And thus there awoke in the world the 2 trees of Valinor. Of all things which Yavanya made, they have most renown, and about their fate all the tales of the elder days are woven. The one had leaves of dark green that beneath were as shining silver, and from each of his countless flowers a dew of silver light was ever falling, and the earth beneath was dappled with the shadows of his fluttering leaves. The other bore leaves of a young green like the new opened beach. Their edges were of glittering gold. Flowers swung upon her branches in clusters of yellow flame, and formed each to a glowing horn that spilled a golden rain upon the ground. And from the blossom of that tree there came forth warmth and a great light. Wish I could live there now instead of in this ghastly hellscape. I better not wish too hard though. The gods might take me literally and send me into that dimensionality, and who knows? Who knows? What do they say? The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Be careful what you wish for. Telperion the One was called in Valinor and Sulpion and Nenkeloti and many other names, but Laurelin the other was, and Malinalda and Kulurian, and many names in song beside. Little Cooney's ripping up his newspaper again. I wish he'd stick to tearing apart the Banksia flower. Now the little one's ripping his newspaper. Anarchy and chaos, people of Earth. Anarchy and chaos. But it's foraging, nesting behaviour, so it's normal for birdies to do that. And they're happy. And that's all that matters. Being happy in the garden. Bye! Little bye! Bye-bye! Meanwhile, my beautiful Bobo's in heaven, my dog, Beauregard. In 7 hours, the glory of each tree waxed to full and waned again to naught, and each awoke once more to life an hour before the other ceased to shine. Thus, in Valinor, twice every day there came a gentle hour of softer light, when both trees were faint, and their gold and silver beams were mingled. You singing a song, little boy? It's warming up to it. Telperion was the elder of the trees, and came first to full stature and to bloom, and that first hour in which he shone, the white glimmer of a silver dawn, the Valar reckoned not into the tale of hours, but named it the opening hour, and counted from it the ages of their reign in Valinor. Therefore at the 6th hour of the first day, and of all the joyful days thereafter, until the darkening of Valinor, Telperion ceased his time of flower, and at the 12th hour, Laurelin her blossoming. And each day of the Valar in Aman contained 12 hours, and ended with the second mingling of the lights, in which Laurelin was waning, but Telperion was waxing. But the light that was spilled from the trees endured long, ere it was taken up into the airs, or sank down into the earth. And the dews of Telperion, and the rain that fell from Laurelin, Varda bordered in great vats, like shining lakes, that were to all the land of the Valar as wells of water and of light. Thus began the days of the bliss of Valinor, and thus began also the count of time. What's the time? I think the rain's coming soon. Damn it. But we've had some wonderful days. You really can't complain. The earth needs nourishment, so the earth needs water, and water is life, people. And my hair's doing funny things for, but oh well, who cares? It's my hair, and like it's human, it does whatever it wants, whatever. A great blessing and a gift, that is too. I'm fully conscious of that. Getting to sleep 11 hours and 39 minutes last night, but you know, I'm looking, my skin's looking quite good, so maybe I'm on the mend, maybe. Don't dare tempt the gods, by the gods, of the gods, for the gods. It's been a long, slow recovery from that last flu. But I did it without medical intervention. Yay me, champion. God forbid I ever need actual medical intervention again, because the last doctor that I saw turned savage and turned to charge me $200 and making me haggle for it like some sort of peasant in a marketplace. Fucking dog he was. I thought he was a good enough doctor too. I was starting to actually hold him in reasonable esteem, and then he did that. By the gods, treacherous they are, venomous and treacherous. So the mama too, when she got sick, just thought, I have to handle my own life force and power and chi and heal myself. To the 10th generation before me, by the way, by the gods. Right, what are my little handsome birdies doing? Little Bo sitting on his perch, very upright, looking very dignified, looking about himself, and Kearney's back to chewing on the banks here, which is good, because that's what I gave it to him for, something to play with. Right, let us continue. But as the ages drew on to the hour appointed by Iluvatar for the coming of the firstborn, Middle-earth lay in a twilight beneath the stars that Vada had wrought in the ages, forgotten in her labours in Ea. And in the darkness Melkor dwelt, and still often walked abroad in many shapes of power and fear, and he wielded cold and fire from the tops of the mountains to the deep furnaces that are beneath them, and whatsoever was cruel or violent or deadly in those days is laid to his charge. From the beauty and bliss of Valinor, the Valar came seldom over the mountains to Middle-earth, but gave to the land beyond the Pelori their care and their love. And in the midst of the blessed realm were the mansions of Auli, and there he laboured. Hello, scrub turkey, you pain in my rear. Hello. Off you go. Bugger off. That's it. And in the midst of the blessed realm were the mansions of Auli, and there he laboured long. For in the making of all things in that land he had the chief part, and he wrought there many beautiful shapely works, both openly and in secret. Of him comes the lore and knowledge of the earth and of all things that it contains, whether the lore of those that make not, but seek only for the understanding of what is, or the lore of all craftsmen, the weaver, the shaper of wood, and the worker in metals. and the tiller and husbandman also, though these last and all that deal with things that grow and bear fruit, must look also to the spouse of our Lee, Yavanya Kementari. Our Lee it is, who is named the friend of the Noldor, for of him they learned much in after days, and they are the most skilled of all the elves, and in their own fashion, according to the gifts which Ilúvatar gave to them, they added much to his teaching, delighting in tongues and in scripts, and in the figures of broidery, of drawing, and of carving. The Noldor also it was who first achieved the making of gems, and the fairest of all gems were the Silmarils, and they are lost. But Manwe Sulimo, highest and holiest of the Valar, sat upon the borders of Aman, forsaking not in his thought the outer lands. For his throne was set in majesty upon the pinnacle of Taniquetil, excuse me, the highest of the mountains of the world, standing upon the margin of the sea. Spirits in the shape of hawks and eagles flew ever to and from his halls, and their eyes could see to the depths of the seas and pierce the high caverns beneath the world. Thus they brought word to him of well nigh all that passed in Arda. Yet some things were hidden, even from the eyes of Manwe and the servants of Manwe. Pardon me. For where Melkor sat in his dark thought, impenetrable shadows lay. Manwe has no thought for his own honour, and is not jealous of his power, but rules all to peace. The Vanyar he loved best of all the elves, and of him they received song and poetry, for poetry is the delight of Manwe, and the song of words is his music. His raiment is blue, and blue is the fire in his eyes, and his sceptre is of sapphire, which the Noldor wrought for him, and he was appointed to be the vice-regent. It says vice-gerent, but I think that was a spelling mistake. A vice-regent of Ilúvatar, king of the world of Valar and elves and men, and the chief defence against the evil of Melkor. With Manwe dwelt Vada the most beautiful, she who in the Sindarin tongue is named Elbereth, queen of the Valar, maker of the stars, and with them were a great host of spirits and blessedness. But Ulmo was alone, and he abode not in Valinor, nor ever came thither, unless there were need for a great council. He dwelt from the beginning of Arda in the outer ocean, and still he dwells there. Thence he governs the flowing of all waters, and the ebbing, the courses of all rivers, and the replenishment of springs, the distilling of all dews, and reign in every land beneath the sky. In the deep places he gives thought to music great and terrible, and the echo of that music runs through all the veins of the world in sorrow and in joy. For if joyful is the fountain that rises in the sun, its springs are in the wells of sorrow unfathomed at the foundations of the earth. The Teleri learned much of Ulumo, and for this reason their music has both sadness and enchantment. Salmar came with him to Arda, he who made the horns of Ulmo that none may ever forget who once has heard them, and Ossi and Unen also, to whom he gave the government of the waves and the movements of the inner seas, and many other spirits beside. And thus it was by the power of Ulmo that even under the darkness of Melkor life coursed still through many secret lodes, and the earth did not die. And to all who were lost in that darkness, or wandered far from the light of the Valar, the ear of Ulmo was ever open, nor has he ever forsaken Middle-earth, and whatsoever may since have befallen of ruin or of change, he has not ceased to take thought for it, and will not until the end of days. And in that time of dark, Yavanna also was unwilling utterly to forsake the outer lands, for all things that grow are dear to her, and she mourned for the works that she had begun in Middle-earth, but Melkor had marred. Temperatures dropped quite a lot, and I think the rain is on its way. We'll carry on a little bit longer. Therefore, leaving the house of Auli and the flowering meads of Valinor, she would come at times and heal the hurts of Melkor, and returning, she would ever urge the Valar to that war with his evil dominion that they must surely wage ere the coming of the firstborn. And Oromi, tamer of beasts, would ride too at whiles in the darkness of the unlit forests. As a mighty hunter he came with spear and bow, pursuing to the death the monsters and fell creatures of the kingdom of Melkor, and his white horse, Nahar, shone like silver in the shadows. Then the sleeping earth trembled at the beat of his golden hooves, and in the twilight of the world Oromi would sound the Valaroma, his great horn, upon the plains of Arda, whereat the mountains echoed, and the shadows of evil fled away, and Melkor himself quailed in Utumno, foreboding the wrath to come. But even as Oromi passed, the servants of Melkor would gather again, and the lands were filled with shadows and deceit. Now all is said concerning the manner of the earth and its rulers in the beginning of days, and ere the world became such as the children of Iluvatar have known it. For elves and men are the children of Iluvatar, and since they understood not fully that theme by which the children entered into the music, none of the Ainur dared to add anything to their fashion. For which reason the Valar are to these kindreds rather their elders and their chieftains than their masters. And if ever in their dealings with elves and men the Ainur have endeavoured to force them when they would not be guided, seldom has this turned to good, howsoever good the intent. The dealings of the Ainur have indeed been mostly with the elves, for Iluvatar made them more like in nature to the Ainur, though less in might and stature, whereas to men they gave strange gifts. For it is said that after the departure of the Valar there was silence, and for an age Iluvatar sat alone and thought. Then he spoke and said, Behold, I love the earth, which shall be a mansion for the Quendi and the Atani. But the Quendi shall be the fairest of all earthly creatures, and they shall have and shall conceive and bring forth more beauty than all my children, and they shall have the greater bliss in this world. But to the Atani I will give a new gift. Therefore he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world, and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else, and of their operation everything should be, in form and deed, completed, and the world fulfilled unto the last and smallest. But Iluvatar knew that men, being set amid the turmoils of the powers of the world, would stray often, and would not use their gifts in harmony. And he said, These two in their time shall find that all that they do redounds at the end only to the glory of my work. Yet the elves believe that men are often a grief to Manwë, who knows most of the mind of Iluvatar, for it seems to the elves that men resemble Melkor most of all the Ainur, although he has ever feared and hated them, even those that served him. It is one with this gift of freedom that the children of men dwell only a short space in the world alive, and are not bound to it, and depart soon whither the elves know not. Whereas the elves remain until the end of days, because they are immortal people. And their love of the earth and all the world is more single and more poignant, therefore, and as the years lengthen, ever more sorrowful. For the elves die not till the world dies, unless they are slain or waste in grief. And to both these seeming deaths they are subject. Seeming deaths. Neither does age subdue their strength, unless one grow weary of 10,000 centuries, and, dying, they are gathered to the halls of Mandos and Valinor, whence they may in time return. But the sons of men die indeed, and leave the world, wherefore they are called the guests or the strangers. Death is their fate, the gift of Iluvatar, which as time wears, even the powers shall envy. But Melkor has cast his shadow upon it, and confounded it with darkness, and brought forth evil out of good, and fear out of hope. Yet of old the Valar declared to the elves in Valinor that men shall join in the second music of the Ainur, whereas Iluvatar has not revealed what he purposes for the elves after the world's end, and Melkor has not discovered it. Thus concludes chapter 1 of the Silmarillion, just in time before the rain starts setting in. So I'll finish here because we're going to be interrupted sooner or later. They said it will start at 11, but I can't really put much stock in the Weather Bureau because they get things so wrong. It's very cloudy. It certainly looks like we might have rain, but you know, it's not raining till it's raining, babies. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. Would you like me to sing for you now? No, because I'm tuneless and don't have a particularly nice singing voice. It is what it is. But I miss singing. I miss singing loudly to the rock song through a certain band that one of their members turned rancid on me. What can you do? C'est la vie, babies. Life goes on. At least the other bands still treat me with kindness and respect and sweetness. So, you see, swings and roundabouts. Can't please all the people all the time, but those who love me for reasons that probably they don't even fully understand, and I certainly don't understand what turns hearts to hatred and what turns hearts to love. It's a bit of a mystery there. Still trying to unravel it all in my own isness, which is my business. The business of isness, people are there. Anyway, although in this legend he speaks that men and humanity are the only ones that get to die, in my philosophy, although we do indeed die and leave our physical forms, we often come back in another form and conduct the same old businesses again, ways of being, until eventually we get it right and eventually freed from the yoke of incarnation and reincarnation. That's just my philosophy. I'm certainly hoping when I finally leave this current physical form that I'm released from being cast back down here to go over and over and over things, because it's been enough near death in this lifetime, and I'm a bit tired of it, quite frankly, and I seek freedom and peace and release and joy and delight and truest greatest love when I enter the next dimension, hopefully eternal love. Wouldn't that be lovely? But this is the thing, they say that spirits get bored of all that peace, love and vegetables and good times and come back here, because here we get to work out our life lessons and dramas and chaos and wars and pestilence and ignominy, and it's the drama and the soul growth and suffering that we want to test our mettle against. And by the gods, what kind of idiot thought that was a good idea? Apparently me, because I'm here, aren't I? Wow. The kookaburras, boys! The kookaburras are singing. At this last phase of my life, and amongst all the ghastly horror, at least I've got to enjoy the joy and delight in my sacred space garden that I co-created and planted out lots of lovely things, and I get to sit back and reap the rewards of all of that hard work that I put in from about 2008 on, when my mother Gisela was granny dumped into that dementia ward, you know. I channeled all that grief and rage and horror, knowing that I was going to be in a fight for a scrap of my inheritance. It became almost a fight for my very life, quite frankly. I channeled it into my lovely garden, and now I sit comfortably and peacefully enjoying all the effort that I put into it. Might have to, oh no, it's going to be an arduous task because I'm allergic to them, but I might have to thin out the bromeliads there. They're growing like soldiers up the embankment. On the other hand, does it really matter if they grow up the bank and fill that space? And could just leave them, I guess. They're really kind of taking over and growing like mad. And the orchids are doing well. I'm looking at the orchids, and they're putting out little spikes for flower spikes. So, you know, everything's really quite lovely here in spite of, you know, the world as it is. There's lovely things still to enjoy and take delight in. Anyway, I bid you, still morning, only 11:02 a.m. I bid you good morning, and wherever you are in the space-time continuum, here on Mother Gaia, planet Earth, Sophia, according to your traditions. Have a wonderful day, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are, and remember that it's a big, big universe. You share it with many, many other entities, holy and some unholy, and love the ones who love you best, nobly and honouringly and kindly and sweetly, and just slough off the rest. Never let the bastards grind you down, and hold your head high, people of Earth. We're here for a good time, not a long time, but don't make that good timing be vainglorious and evil and destructive and of low moral code and sordid and foul, because you have to come back again and clean that mess up. You might have to come back many times after, and it just behooves one to live decently and honourably in this incarnation and avoid all the muck and mire that we'll have to sort out for however many other incarnations, because it does get wearing on the nerves. Trust me on that one. Don't worry, I've paid lots of karmic debts in this incarnation, probably still paying them if truth be known. Have this idea that I'm being all sweet and goody two-shoes now, but I wasn't perfect either. I fought against every arsehole that tried to destroy me. I fought long and I fought hard. I didn't always come out winning either. Evil was enabled by my own government. Well, now, in a weird kind of way, those entities are paying too. But it's not what I wanted for my humanity, to be cast down by their nanobot technology and their anti-humanist attitudes. That is not revenge that I would have sought, because there's good in the world. You must always fight for those that are still good and pure of heart and their offspring. Life can still be beautiful. And worth living. And prosperous and full of integrity and honour. Mama T has spoken. End of transmission. I'll be back tomorrow with another chapter of the Silmarillion. Blessed be.